Today's hearing entitled An Overview of the National Science Foundation Budget for Fiscal Year 2014. In front of you are packets containing the written testimony, biographies, and truth and testimony disclosures for today's witnesses. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Thank you to everyone here today for this research subcommittee hearing. I am pleased to welcome Acting Director Dr. Merritt and President Arvizu to discuss NSF's priorities for fiscal year 2014. Thank you both for coming. Before we begin today's hearing, I would like to make a few comments about the recent budget proposed by the President for 2014. Today, our national debt stands at almost $17 trillion, and 62 cents of every dollar is spent on our mandatory spending or entitlement programs, and everyone pretty much agrees that these are the largest drivers of our debt. Since 2008, approximately 19 cents of every dollar has been spent on Medicare and Medicaid, and 4 years later, currently, we are spending 23 cents of every dollar on these programs. Without reform, this trend will continue. Before my time in Congress as a cardiothoracic surgeon in Evansville, Indiana, I saw firsthand how these spiraling costs were crowding out funding for other federally funded programs like scientific research and development. Instead of, in my view, showing leadership, the President has spent his time in office defending a health care law that makes matters even worse. The Administration has not offered a pathway forward on our mandatory spending programs other than continually cutting the funding for provider reimbursement to hospitals and practitioners, risking access to quality health care for our nation's seniors. At this point, I don't see any evidence the Affordable Care Act will lower medical costs in the future. Instead, it continues to irresponsibly add to our yearly deficit and total national debt in spite of the rhetoric to the contrary. Unfortunately, the proposed fiscal year budget from the Administration has a lot of accounting gimmicks. Because of the Administration's failed leadership and failed economic policies, we are left with the non-targeted cuts in sequestration and ongoing record deficits and debt. Washington's inability to address these fiscal issues is hampering the ability of our economy to recover from recession. Hardworking Americans who stand to benefit from the research and technology our country develops may be the victims. House Republicans have tried to address these issues by passing responsible budgets for the last 3 years. However, we don't control Washington, D.C. The other budgets offered from our friends on the other side have included higher taxes, more spending, and more importantly for this discussion, don't begin to address the significant drivers of our debt, and that is our mandatory programs. In addition, the budgets that have been proposed never balance. I stress, in my view, if we do not address our mandatory spending programs, funding for all other Federal programs will continue to feel the financial pinch. Imagine the high-paying jobs that will result when today's basic science discoveries turn into tomorrow's marketable technologies. Tomorrow's prosperity depends on what we do here today. And back to our present situation and the current year budget for the National Science Foundation. We must now focus on answering what is the appropriate role of the Federal Government in funding science research. I believe that by asking this and related questions, we can create a stronger, more efficient National Science Foundation, nimble enough to tackle the numerous scientific challenges of tomorrow. As a nation, we must focus our scientific priorities and stretch every dollar for maximum benefit in these tight financial times. As an example, do we need to fund studies such as the International Criminal Court in Pursuit of Justice, $260,000 funded through NSF? I think that's a good discussion to have. These can be luxury things to fund that would be nice to fund if we have the money, but it's not something, in my view, that we need to fund. This type of research may be more appropriately funded through the private sector or other government agencies. Our charge is to ensure the American taxpayer is getting value for their hard-earned dollars that we spend on research through NSF. I strongly support NSF funding in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, cybersecurity, and STEM education, among others. Although the scientific community is not facing ideal fiscal environments. I still believe that America's best and brightest scientists will continue to persevere and produce the innovations and discoveries of tomorrow. We should support the hardworking scientist who stays up all night to repeat their experiments and doggedly pursues their ideas because they believe they are on to the next great discovery and may answer the next big question in their chosen field. I recently visited several universities and colleges in Indiana, including Purdue University and Indiana University, and talked to NSF-funded researchers, and I was impressed. I still have a great faith and optimism in the scientific community, and that its strength will continue and improve. But for American science to succeed, we must be sure that the NSF remains focused on its scientific goals and missions. I look forward to the thoughtful discussion that will ensue. At this point, I'd also like to thank Ranking Member Lipinski and everyone participating in today's hearing.